Well, for Victoria's gay and lesbian community, the Midsumma Festival has been a highlight for the last 25 years. Over that time, it's grown into a 3-week-long celebration, featuring scores of events including parties, book readings, theatre productions and sports days. It all winds up on Sunday with the annual Pride March through St Kilda. This year's silver anniversary has not only been a time for celebration, it's sparked some reflection on Midsumma's survival, as well as debate about where the festival might go in the future. Andrew Bell reports.
Midsumma at 25. The anniversary message is on almost every other tram, and that's as big a seal of approval as you can possibly get in Melbourne.
First time that Yarra trams were able to support the festival like that was sort of unbelievable, and the office and the team got a lot of calls from people saying, "I've just been on a Midsumma tram."
In fits and starts, Midsumma has grown to be part of Melbourne's summer landscape, embracing the various strands of the queer community, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender and intersex, in 130 events over 3 weeks. There have been rainbow-themed events before, some spurred by Victoria's homosexual law reforms in 1980, but nothing stuck around for long. Sydney had its Mardi Gras, formed as a political act grabbing the limelight, but what of Melbourne? Some of those who guided Midsumma's early days say good economic times played their part in making an annual festival viable.
The early 90s saw the formation of the notion of the pink dollar. We used that as a catalyst to attract sponsors, partners, event holders, and build a cultural program around that notion.
Where Rapid Fire is completely full.
Crusader Hillis remembers those early years a little differently. He and his partner Roland Thompson operate the Hares and Hyenas bookstore, which has been the literary heart of the festival since it opened in 1991.
If you look at the first few years, they were pretty much constantly in debt. By sort of like 93, I think they were looking at almost winding up because they were losing money. They weren't really getting the sponsorship till a bit later. But I think Midsumma did come about also just from a really strong grassroots feeling that there was culture in Melbourne, there was culture everywhere, and there needed to be a festival to reflect that.
As well as financial insecurity in the early years, there were also critics, the late Bruce Ruxton among them. But the Premier of the day would have none of it.
If the gay and lesbian community wish to have a function in this state, as Victorians, they should not be prohibited from doing so simply because they exist. I would have thought we lived in a tolerant society.
By that stage, he'd sort of been the arts minister. He sort of realised that he couldn't sort of turn his head anywhere in Melbourne without bumping into a poofter. So he actually had to start, getting his head around that. In fact, and he did get his head around it.
Some people may still struggle to get their head around the idea of it. But at Midsumma's headline event, there's every sign of an increasingly confident and diverse community. Midsumma's carnival is just like a queer grand final day, and the crowds are just as substantial. An estimated 100,000 turned out this year.
Although you'll see a lot of theatricality and you'll see performers and drag queens and you'll see a lot of colour and movement, mostly you'll just see regular people of all ages, sizes, colours and sexualities. So it's very mixed. And because it's such a big part of the population of Melbourne, it mirrors the general trends.
It's part party, part family picnic, with some retail and community messages, all topped off by plenty of politics. Midsumma veterans think the festival can play the role of a quiet persuader when it comes to issues like same-sex marriage.
I think putting out warrior-style messages through an arts and cultural platform is a kind of a soft approach that's nice. There are other organisations in Melbourne and, in fact, worldwide who tackle those battles in a warrior-like fashion. It's not the role of Midsumma to do that. It's the role of Midsumma to bring about cultural change in another way.
Crusader Hillis believes Midsumma needs some cultural change as well. He says it needs to renew itself constantly to remain relevant. and also acknowledge that Melbourne and Victoria are different places in 2013 to what they were in 1988.
I think Midsumma has tread more of a main constituents type approach, sort of like the gay and lesbian community. And I think those things are really going to change as younger people start getting involved with the festival.
Midsumma will be at its most political this Sunday when the annual Pride March takes over the streets of St Kilda. This year's theme is Celebrate and Demonstrate. Celebrating and demonstrating have been the bookends of Midsumma for a quarter of a century, and those closest to it believe that won't change in the foreseeable future.
It's easy to sort of think, oh, we've come so far and there's a sense of equality now and freedom. But, you know, the truth is that's not the case for everyone. And particularly transsexual people, intersex people, or people who come from a sort of non-accepting family in that sort of younger period coming out. And there will always be a need for visible acceptance and making connections with people.